A December 2023 OCTA Research survey shows former and incumbent lawmakers as possible top candidates for next year's senatorial elections, but opposition leaders led by former Vice President Leni Robredo lag behind. What are the prospects for the administration's UniTeam as well as the opposition to pursue their agenda in the 2025 polls? Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, Politics as usual. Our guests for tonight, former presidential spokesperson Edwin Lacerda and political analyst Dino Manhit here in the studio. And joining us via Zoom, Richard Heydarian. They're all comebacking guests. This is a good way to start the year. But you know, I can imagine people now thinking na parang umpisa pa lang ng taon, bagong taon, politika na pag-uusapan, eleksyon na pag-uusapan. But it's never too early. It's not too early. Filing ng COC is 9 months from now, hindi ba, Edwin?
This year will be good year for the country. You know why? There's going to be, people are looking at it with a negative impression on the economy. When it's election year, may labas ang pera. So it will will improve the economy to that extent because money will flow. That's one reason why every election year is always a growth year. But although 2024, it's not just preparing for next year. No? Already right now, you've already had this OCTA survey. It's indicative that people are starting to warm up to the idea of a forthcoming Senate race next year.
Right. After all, politics is a cottage industry in this
country. It is a cottage industry, and political dynasties are also cottage industries. That's why.
Yeah, or they describe themselves as political families, not dynasties, di ba? Pero 9 months na lang before mag-file ng COC for all the candidates. It's really never too early. Dino, your thoughts now?
I think it's time for those who are interested to run, especially at the national level, to start testing waters and really to look at surveys, because there's really a science behind your capacity to win and also your capacity to work and ally with other groups. So that's what we will be seeing until the actual filing of COC or the candidacy, certificate for candidacy by October.
9 months from now, like I was saying. Richard, joining us via Zoom, your thoughts muna. Then we'll talk about sino yung mga, those who figured in the top 12, in the Magic 12 in a little bit. But your initial thoughts first, Richard.
Well, I mean, before we go into the surveys, because there are many surveys, and while there are certain consistencies, like another Tulfo seems to be in the race to top the Senate race, there's still, I think, sufficient divergence among the different surveys. If you look at the SWS, there's another pulsation survey, which I don't think is public yet. But if you look at some of the surveys, I think there's some room for the opposition to hope for a potential position at the national level. But I think in general, I think the strategy of the opposition, the real opposition, should be to make sure that they're not completely boxed out of the essentially the House of Duterte versus House of Marcos kind of situation we're seeing right now. We're seeing the total conflagration of the UniTeam. Things are really heating up between the two sides. So the question is, are we going to see the real opposition really stepping up to the game, or we're going to see a functional opposition, meaning the Duterte camp, really stepping up to the game? If you look at the surveys, at least several senators, 2 or 3 senators very close to the former president, seem to be in a very good position to win again in the Senate race. But as far as the opposition is concerned, I think we're yet to hear a single one of them really declaring their interest for the highest position. I think the one who has been doing best, especially in the OCTA survey, like Leni Robredo, for instance, or there's still doubts as to whether she still wants to re-enter politics or whether she wants to run at the LGU level, if ever she'll run for politics.
Yeah, which is the
so things could still
plan.
change once some of these candidates from the opposition make big announcements and try to rally their supporters.
LGU level for Leni, the original plan talaga sa 2022 was Naga or Kamsur as governor. But kanina you said the opposition has to make sure that they're not boxed out of this Marcos versus Duterte or UniTeam versus Duterte group, right? What exactly are you hinting at?
No, I mean, if you look at the rhetoric of the criticism of the Duterte camp or supporters of the former president against Marcos Jr., they're now talking about good governance. They're now talking about transparency, accountability, being on the side of taxpayers, being for peace in the West Philippine Sea. So I think the pro-Duterte camp, I don't know necessarily where Sara Duterte is going to stand on it, but those who are very close to the former president, they're bloggers, they're influencers, they're essentially positioning themselves as the anti-establishment force once again, and they're implying that there are many quote-unquote pink forces who are the de facto. Kumbaga, there's now an alternative UniTeam between Marcos Jr. and the so-called yellows or pinks. That's the kind of messaging that is coming out from the empresarios of the Duterte camp. So I think as things stand, they're going to be boxed out, speaking of the progressive opposition. And if you look at their performance in the surveys, they still have a lot to climb up, no, in terms of making an impression. So that's where my concern with the being boxed out is coming from.
Yeah, itong alternative UniTeam, Dindo and Edwin, and Dindo first, no. This sounds like almost ano to, para bang the yellow forces, the pink clowns, the pink forces were out and out anti-Marcos for the longest time, and then if you're talking about the alternative UniTeam, BBM supporters plus these opposition figures, what are we looking at?
That's the reality of a political system whereby there's really no strong party system, and it's based on personalities. But when you look at the current administration now, you would like a strong midterm performance in coalition with a group that might be able to help you push your agenda instead of simply looking behind your back if you're being attacked, as what Richard spoke of earlier. A lot of bloggers seem to be harnessed or have been harnessed to keep on attacking.
They've been going after BBM.
Yeah, so
parang
you'd like to work,
thing.
especially when your messaging is about moving this country forward, and what's keeping you from moving this forward and criticizing you are even this type of people. So it could be an evolution of a possible coalition that can bring people together, especially if there's a oneness in terms of where do you stand on certain issues.
Is this a theory, or are there actual talks among the groups already or among individuals na baka pwede magsama?
Could be a theory. Yeah.
Theory, but it's something you think should happen, no?
Well, you know, on the yellow side, President Marcos was not how they pictured him to be during the campaign. Anak ng diktador, corrupt. Well, to a large degree, you don't see that. I mean, he's not his father. Like he said, I'm not my father. And therefore, he has acted in a way contrary to the expectations of the yellow forces. And therefore, it was to a large degree, hindi pala siya ganun kasama. And so there's a natural flow of parang, okay siya. Comparing him to President Duterte, who did all the EJK, who really suppressed some of our basic rights. So to the yellow forces, he's a better alternative to the Duterte side. Do you want someone to come back and have a reign of terror again? So that's why there's a natural flow. Hindi pala masama. Baka pwede.
So
there's supposedly a natural flow of coalition, if ever that should happen. But the question there is, we're talking about strategy, but the number one factor is, where are the resources coming from? Do the yellow forces have resources? Remember, in any campaign, you're going to spend, for a senatorial election, you're going to spend around 500 million. Where will the yellow forces get their money? And they're not in power. Whenever you're not in power, hirap ka sa pera. When we were in government, a midterm election is always a referendum of the president. And therefore, and it was midterm yan, you have all the forces aligned with the president. Even that's the reason why a vice president should not go against the president in a midterm.
At least not this early, and not before the midterm.
Jojo Binay was wise enough that we knew that he was going to be an opposition, but in the whole 5 years of his being vice president,
he never once
went against Pinoy. Because that's a reality. When you go on a survey, pag inaway mo ang presidente, siya ang ama ng bayan o siya ang ina ng bayan, depende kung...
Pero hindi naman inaaway ni Sara si BBM, pero yung mga nakapaligid sa kanya.
That's the point. Kung gumalaw si Sara and naglagay siya ng mga proxy candidates niya, we don't know what will happen in that. Is this definitely ang lamang si Presidente Marcos. The question right now is who can who can compete against her. The only likely forces would be Sara, because she has her own power base together with her father.
So kumbaga for the yellow forces, the yellow plus the pinks, they're thinking, like you were saying earlier, between BBM and the Marcoses and Sara Duterte, they'd rather go for.
If it's a question
Or
of
with me.
those two polls, no?
Yeah. Okay, we'll be back after a quick break. Stay tuned. Politics as usual. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. Still with us, Edwin Lasherda and Dino Manhit here in the studio, and Richard Hedarian via Zoom. So itong, let's talk na about the survey. So itong OCTA Research, let's bring up the numbers. December 10 to 14, 2023. Within the Magic 12 are incumbents or, there's Isko Moreno there. Incumbents plus former senators and former national personalities. Even Jojo Binay is here, Lito Lapid, and then Gibo Teodoro, Onasan, Abalos, Willie Revillame, Doc Willie Ong. Itong lang, I'm just curious about why, why Leni Robredo and Kiko Pangilinan, Mar Rojas, even if you say baka hindi naman siya tumakbo, Bam Aquino, Frank Drilon, Sani Trillanes, Laila De Lima, and Chel Diokno, all these opposition figures not ranking very well in awareness or whatever. Let's start with Richard. The explanation for that is what?
No, I think, we saw essentially 3 elections where the liberal opposition, literally liberal party affiliated people, did not do very well. So clearly we have a significant structural problem facing them. I think a lot of people either bought into the disinformation against them, and a lot of people also were disappointed with the empirical shortcomings of people associated with the Liberal Party or who came from the Liberal Party and became the president in the past. So I think they really have to do something special, something different here. Are we going to see a kind of a revamp opposition? Are we going to see a kind of a grand opposition? If you look at the Christmas party picture that we had of the oppositions, some people from the more Makabayan bloc affiliated people were in that picture. I think Franz Castro, for instance, Congressman Franz Castro was there, among others. Are we looking at a revamping here? Or as far as the opposition is concerned, are they going to run as kind of Ocho Derecho, which didn't do very well?
Ocho Derecho sa
29th elections? Or they're going to run separately. Yeah, they're going to run separately and try to rebuild their personal brand, because I think the traditional liberal opposition is really in a crisis and they need something more significant than, waiting for time to heal things. It doesn't seem to be working in that sense.
Yeah, but are they
give them a chance again.
But are they even interested, right? Dindo and Edwin, like we were talking earlier. Interesado ba sila? Tatakbo ba sila? Or LGU? Or hindi tatakbo? Mar doesn't seem interested in returning to politics, or, Huh? Yeah, he's busy with Pepe and Pilar.
Yeah.
Oo.
No, but really,
But like you said earlier, of course.
the reality is, where will I get the money to fund me?
Yeah.
I mean, Taipans will not fund you during a midterm elections. There's no change. Mm-hmm. There's no change in leadership. So they've invested with BBM. So far, he's not been doing something that would damage the economy. He's been saying the right things in terms of the defense of the West Philippine Sea. Mm-hmm. So,
and he's been showing up.
He's been showing up
early.
Yeah, but he's really been there's really no reason why a big funder, unless he's really determined to change the personalities involved. But by and large, when it's midterm, medyo hindi tumataya ang mga may pera eh.
Oo. And also, like we were saying earlier, talagang para bang the direction ang pupuntahan talaga para bang coalition of sorts, an alliance of sorts with the Marcos forces instead of opposing, instead of being the opposition, right?
Well, Dindo, ikaw naman.
No, sagutin mo muna.
Well, no, but it really depends on how strong. Tama rin si Richard in that point, no? For now, they're really, to a large degree, they're back to staying in a Beetle. You remember during 2010, the Volkswagen, tapos ngayon, when Pinoy became president, lumaki, and then they're back
naging
now.
Kombi muna.
Ngayon, Beetle ulit.
Beetle ulit, oh.
So it's really, that's the quandary of, I'm just referring to Liberal Party. Yeah. And you've got, within that party, you have different views, like si Stella Kimbo was different from the other Liberal Party. So there's maybe perhaps unity in principles, but as to the day-to-day tactical, there's no discussion eh.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I know.
Oo. Well, Richard was saying earlier, in so many words, para bang kapag LP sinabi, medyo kwida ang tao, di ba? Lindo?
Yung senatorial naman, people will not vote based on party affiliation. Eh. Maybe that's one of the mistake of people affiliated with LP. They wanted to build on an LP brand, which was not there in the first place. There was a Noynoy Aquino brand, not LP. So I think if they'd like to build their brand, those who might be interested should build on their own personal brand and build from there. What was the mistake post-2022? That's why they don't show up. And I know of surveys that has been run by Pulse. It's the same numbers. It's not as good where these people are. And because after the election, they became quiet and disappeared. You have a 28% support base there. Can it still be harnessed?
Right.
Could be. But you have to build that again, build that coalition. And to build that coalition, you have to understand where do you stand right now. And for me, right now, you seem to have, some of your supporters are actually supporters of President Bongbong Marcos in terms of the business sector, supporters in West Philippine Sea issue. But one thing that divide you also is the other side, which is, as mentioned by Secretary Edwin, the Dutertes, di ba? That's the other pole that you would not like to be associated with. So these are things that you need to, if you're them, to ask yourself, would you be open to build a coalition? Because at the grassroots level naman, I'm talking about the political families, as you have said, they are flexible. Lalo kung mga pinagsamahan yung mga, what's 2, 3, 4 people that we used to call, isingit na lang yan in the slate. So, and also, always remember also na some of the re-electionists who are independent, some of the liberal parties have worked with them in the past. I'm referring to Tito Soto, Ping Lacson. Maybe time to come up with that kind of a slate with them. Then also work on having a slate with some candidates who will be running with Marcos. And that will be a powerful, because if it's a referendum between Marcos and the other side, there's no other side, because the other side would be the governance of the Duterte administration.
But if we'll take a quick break na lang muna. More from our guests when we return. This is Politics as Usual. Welcome back to Politics as Usual. Richard and Darren on Zoom, Lindo Manhit and Edwin Lasherda here in the studio. Pero kunyari may opposition candidates for the Senate in 2025, tapos makikipag-alyansa sa Marcos administration. Pero buo pa ba ang opposition? Parang so this will be what? Parang individual alliances.
Buo pa ang opposition. What opposition are you referring to?
No, kasi there's who defines kasi who the opposition is.
Ganda ng sagot. What opposition are you referring to? Is there one?
That's why at the end of the day, it's what coalition can be built in midterms. Then beyond the midterms, that's a different discussion. So how do you define an opposition? The opposition of 2022 might be different from a 2025. That's always a possibility. If depending on how you really, I use the word, how do you position yourself in this political environment?
Yeah. Earlier, Edwin, di ba? So Leni, Kiko, Mar, I'm reading the names of the opposition figures in the survey. No? So Bam Aquino, Frank Drilon, Sonny Trillanes, Chel Diokno, Laila De Lima. Sino dito interesado na tumakbo sa Senado, para sa Senado?
I heard Bam and Chel are Kiko. Kiko, Bam. Sila yung tatlong pinakamataas. Si Leni, si Bam, si Kiko, di ba? Si Chel, I know also is interested in running. But the others, I don't know. Like Laila, she just left, she was just released from prison. She's out on bail. So she'd like to rebuild her life first. I mean, she's been saying that. So I doubt if she wants to get involved. But she can be a strong advocate. She can be a good campaign. And she doesn't hit on, she's going to hit on Duterte, but not on Marcos.
Yeah. That was obvious, no? The day she was released on bail. Yung mga opposition na yan, is there already, I mean, it's just 9 months before filing ng COC, meron na bang grupo ng mga operators ng opposition who are getting a slate together to para makabuo ng isang slate para by the time filing ng COC and by the time the campaign starts in early next year, meron na tayo.
Hindi ko nga alam kung LP pa rin yung mga yan eh. I mean, some of them have formed, like for instance, Chell ran under another party eh. Yung what's the name?
Nakalimutan
The group of Leni Robredo. Yung ano niya, they form a party eh. See that professor in Ateneo?
That professor.
Pero that was actually formed by Bam Aquino.
Yes, correct. That's why I'm saying.
KNP.
KNP
Correct.
Yeah,
that
for the viewers, yan ang malungkot kasi sa Philippine politics. Hindi na natin maalala yung mga pangalan ng mga political party.
They targeted small, and I think they won a few vice mayor.
kaya natin to.
Okay.
Kaya natin to.
Okay.
That's a group of Jesse. They form a party eh. So I know that it was for my BAM. You're correct. That's why, is he going to say as liberal? So is it going to be Liberal Party leading?
LP or no, hindi pwedeng LP lang eh.
Hindi nga.
LP and
Pero tama sabi ni during the break, sabi ni Dindo, out of sight, out of mind. And look at the top 12.
Yeah.
These are people, and the only one who's not really very active there is Jojo Binay.
Yeah, right.
Isko has his
Even
own show
Isko,
now.
yeah.
Bulaga.
May
May show siya.
Oo.
So everybody is talagang top of mind yan eh. So name recall ang labanan talaga.
Right, name recall. Kaya nga awareness eh. They have to
Awareness.
know, kilala mo ba to? No? And itong mga nasa top 12 sa Magic 12, yun talagang kilala ng tao. Okay, final words na, your last thoughts. Let's begin with Richard, who's joining us via Zoom. Richard?
Yeah, I think the approach of the opposition should be more or less a la carte. No, I think running yung parang ocho derecho style will make them more susceptible to the usual attacks of opposition affiliated folks. So they have to be creative. They have to be cross-sectional. Different kinds of cross-ideological coalition building. And some people perhaps should just run on their own terms, on their own merit, because as Dindo correctly pointed out, we're still a very personality-based politics. Now, the Senate race matters because I know some would think that 2025 medyo malabo for what I call the ideological opposition, and this is really going to be between Duterte, the functional opposition, and the Marcoses. But you have to have some people from the real opposition in the ring, because it's very possible that 2028 may not come. Or at least, but after 2025, the pro-Marcos camp, if they dominate the midterm elections, they could push for constitutional change altogether. And that way, they could box out both the real opposition and the functional opposition for good. So the stakes are very high, even though, of course, things are not looking very good for the real opposition or progressive opposition as far as their prospects at the national politics level is concerned. I think 2 or 3 big names should throw their hats into the ring and try to maneuver for some position at the national level, because we could have constitutional change questions and maneuvers after 2025, especially if the pro-Marcos camp wins for good and wants to box out the Dutertes and potentially also box out the real opposition.
Well, there's only one opposition senator. Sorry, there are 2, Risa and Coco Pimentel. But Risa stays until 2028. Si Coco is hanggang
Retiring.
2025, ano? Anyway, we'll check that in a bit. Okay, we have a minute to go. So final words from Dindo and then Edwin.
Yeah, I think everyone that wants to run needs to be strategic. But something to factor in is the strength of a popular president. I believe the president still gets within 7 out of 10 Filipinos supporting him. So if you'd like to be strategic and you're happy to push his agenda, 2025 is a good time to coalesce with the president who has the political capital, legitimately winning his presidential position, and is legitimately still accepted by the general public and by key people. So if you're an opposition or a Senate, would like to be in the Senate, try to think strategically also and build from there.
So yung kampanya mo, hindi pwedeng attack ng attack. You have to come up, I mean, if you're going to be creative, something helpful, I guess.
Yes,
that
because that's what the people want.
For you, no?
That's what the people want.
Yeah. Edwin?
The more unpopular view, we always think of opposition, dapat tumakbo ka. But a more unpopular, knowing the reality of the lack of resources, the lack of support, is really coalesce with and demand some concessions. Give your support, you don't necessarily have to run. At least get some concessions. For instance, in policies, liberal policies that you want to be taken up by the president. And from there, and maybe, who knows, after midterms, join the government. And maybe in that way, you can influence. Because the way we look at it kasi, pag opposition ka, dapat tumakbo ka. Kahit na wala kang, hindi mo kaya, tatakbo ka. So maybe that's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
The way to do it is really just support whoever you think is the one that will bring the country forward.
Oh. Who's joining government from the office?
I have no idea who.
Hindi, may picture
Ask your
sila din.
cousin.
Pumunta ng Capiz kasi si BBM, di ba? And Mar was there to welcome. Siyempre, anak ng Capiz yan. Di ba? Okay, thank you very much to our guests. Richard Haydarian joining us via Zoom. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Dindo Manhit. And thank you, Edwin Lasherda. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. See you back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Sports Desk with Andre Felix is next.